Yeah, so Detroit locked up their bye with the win against Minnesota, and now Detroit is Super Bowl favorites. Do you consider them the biggest threat to your Chiefs, them being Super Bowl favorites, or is it somebody else?
No, it's the Bills. It's been the Bills all year, and this is I didn't get everything right in the preseason, but this was one of them. That the Bills were way, way, way undervalued by the world, and that they were still going to be excellent. And so here's why I think. Tell me if because I tried to explain this on the show yesterday, but I don't know if I did a good job of explaining it, or maybe I did do a good job, but it's just like my co-hosts aren't as big of gamblers as I am, so it didn't really translate. I said that even though Detroit right now is the favorite to win the Super Bowl, I think that if Detroit played Kansas City in the Super Bowl, Kansas City would be the Vegas favorite. So how do you square those two ideas? And my rationale was I think what Vegas believes Detroit is more likely to win the NFC than the Chiefs are to win the AFC. That Detroit's path is cleaner because I I would imagine right now after Detroit and Kansas City, the two biggest Super Bowl public picks are the Bills and the Ravens. And Kansas City is going to have to go through, in all likelihood, one of those teams. And so I don't look at the Lions as the biggest threat. And I do want, listen, I thought the Lions were going to lose that football game, and they played great. They played great. And listen, Terry and Arnold got hurt. That's another defensive injury. And I know folks saw how they played against Sam Darnold and said, well, what more do you want from them? Like, it doesn't matter they had all these injuries. Look at how great they were. I do not think that specific defensive approach, which I'll explain in a moment, will work against great quarterbacks, which was, we're just sitting in the house, man. We are just sitting in the house again and again and again. They blitzed over 60% of the plays in that game. Darnold did not handle it well, and the Vikings offense couldn't function because of it. The last thing, historically speaking, great quarterbacks love being blitzed because they get man-to-man coverage. They can usually diagnose it before the snap, and they know where the ball's going. Now, Detroit's in a unique spot where they could make the Super Bowl and never have to play a great quarterback. Because the NFC, in my opinion, only has one, and that's Matt Stafford. And Stafford is an underdog in round one to Minnesota. But in the Super Bowl, I don't think that will work against Patrick Mahomes. I also don't think that would work against Josh Allen. And if you're playing the Ravens in the Super Bowl, it means Lamar, definitionally, has gotten over his playoff bugaboos. Because to get to the Super Bowl for Lamar, it is Steelers, then Josh Allen, then Patrick Mahomes, assuming the bracket holds. If he does all of that, then the Lamar postseason questions are answered. So for Detroit, I give them massive credit for what they've accomplished, and Dan Campbell taking that team from 3 wins to 9 wins to 12 wins to 15 wins is remarkable. Truly remarkable. And I think they are good enough whole to win the Super Bowl. And listen, maybe even with all these injuries, they'll just outscore people and they'll be able to do it. But what they did Sunday night, to me, was not sustainable against the type of quarterback they're going to have to beat to win a Super Bowl. But it was very sustainable, DeMonze, against Sam Darnold, and I know you have a Darnold question.
Yeah. Do you think that Darnold played himself out of a contract with that performance, and like it's the first big game of the season?
I think if he does it again, yeah. So here's Here's what is simultaneously awesome and so cruel about sports, but really this sport, the NFL. Because I I get annoyed at times when people dismiss playoff performances or really anything in the NFL with this. It's small sample size. Because it's a small sample size sport. You're not going to get the 500 at bats you get in baseball. You're not going to get a 7-game series you get in basketball. You get a game, couple games. That's the nature of the sport. And Darnold went into Sunday night. So if we just go backwards 40 hours, Sam Darnold had sitting in front of him this. If I play great tonight, we get the 1 seed. I basically guarantee myself $100 million and have a real chance to win the Super Bowl. Instead, he had his worst game of the year. And now he goes into his first career playoff game knowing if I play terribly again, I'm just Sam Darnold again. And that, again, that might be unfair, but that's why football is so great, is because it is a little unfair, and so it's so captivating to watch. And if he plays poorly, he's never played in a playoff game. So it is not an exaggeration at all to say Sunday night was the biggest game of his career by a mile. Yeah. And now the biggest game of his career is this weekend. Monday night. He can save it, but if he plays poorly and they lose, I do not believe Minnesota's giving him a long-term contract. Maybe they franchise tag him, or maybe someone else, wants to trade for him and give him the contract, but it's now up in the air in a way it otherwise wouldn't have been. We have some breaking news. The Titans have fired their GM, Ran Carthon. Listen, real quick on that, they brought in, let me get the exact time on this correct, because this is breaking news. So they brought in Ran Carthon from San Francisco a couple years ago. And his first big move, is that right? Hold on. Wasn't the January of 23? So hold on, was that not his first big move? I thought his first big move was the A.J. Brown trade. Do I just have that wrong? So I want to be fair here. Hold on. So yeah, I do have that wrong. So who the hell traded A.J. Brown?
A.J. Robinson?
So Ran Carthon got there in January of 23. Who was the GM there before? John Robinson. So that's what happened. Okay, so this is where I had it in my head. My apologies. And I'm glad I checked that, because that would have been bad. John Robinson traded A.J. Brown. It infuriated Mike Vrabel. And basically, I think because there was that severing of a relationship between Vrabel and John Robinson, they picked Vrabel. They then brought in Ran Carthon, and it didn't seem like Ran Carthon and Vrabel were ever exactly aligned. And in that instance, they went with Ran, and now that does look like it was a mistake, because Vrabel is probably the hottest coaching candidate this side of Ben Johnson, and they just decided to move on from Ran Carthon. But that's a short tenure, man. January of 23 to January of 25 as a GM. Usually GMs get more time than head coaches. We're not, and now they're in, this is the spot you don't want to be in, and the reason, just for a moment, the reason to defend the Giants bringing both guys back, Shane and Dable, I don't like it. I probably would have fired both of them. But what you don't want to do is fire one and then have your GM and head coach not aligned. And now that's exactly what the Titans are going to have. The Titans are now going to hire a general manager. And that general manager is going to say, well, I didn't pick Brian Callahan, the head coach. It's not my, I want my head coach.
Yeah.
And so now Brian Callahan goes into next year where the GM isn't his guy. And so that part is that usually that misalignment doesn't work out so well. And so, but the Titans, I don't know what happened. I don't know why they waited a day, but they have fired Rand Carthon. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to get more from the show, and make sure to click the bell to get notified every time new content drops. Check out full episodes of What's Right wherever you get your podcasts, or just click the link in the description below.